Hi everyone, so today, rather than a playing video as such, I wanted to talk about something that came up in another video I was filming for my other channel, and that's stage fright and how we deal with it, where it comes from, why it arises in the first place. And I thought it might be useful to explore that, but also if anyone has any helpful tips and ways of dealing with stage fright themselves, then if they could share in the comments below, it might be really helpful to other people as well. So that was my thought process, my with regard to today's topic. So stage fright, why I personally am interested in it, and why I thought to talk about it, even though it's something I very rarely speak about, is because I have long term stage fright experiences. So they started ever since No, they didn't start when I first started music. When I first started music, I was very young and I was full of joy, and I was full of a lack of awareness, perhaps, but in a good way, as to whether or not I was making mistakes. So I just enjoyed playing. I liked playing. I loved playing for the sake of playing. I started on a recorder that I won in a school fair. I taught myself how to play it, and then I convinced my teachers to let me into recorder class, even though I'm pretty sure my parents hadn't paid for it at the time. And they let me in, and that was my beginning. And those first years of musical experience, singing and playing, were really wonderful and sealed my love of music forever, I think. So where does stage fright come from? When does it arise? I suppose that has something to do with when you start playing music and the circumstances around your performances, as well as your life experience at the time, life situation perhaps, and your personal temperament. So as I became more self-aware and more self-critical of my performance across the board, it wasn't just in music, it was in everything. I started to become a little perfectionist, really. And I noticed very quickly when something was not as I wished it to be, or as I heard it in my head. So I could hear what I wanted to express, and if it came out differently, I became unhappy. So that was part of the process. I became also very aware that people around me were more proficient in their instruments, especially when I moved to the violin. I was quite late in starting, and there were people around me who'd been playing since they were 3, and so I guess I moved further and further out of my comfort zone of free expression, and more into the realm of written music that was expected to be performed in a specific way. And I think for me, that was probably the beginnings of my anxiety in terms of stage fright. So what was happening was really that I was beginning to feel like something was expected, a particular outcome was expected, and I became more and more aware of an audience that was perhaps, they probably were listening for pleasure, but because I was having tuition by that point in music, and sometimes my lessons were going well and sometimes they weren't. I was getting told I needed to practice more and my pieces weren't as my teachers would have liked them to be. So that is you know, for me, that was where the split between my inner world of music and self-expression and the joy that came with that, and the outer world of expectation started to happen. And anytime there's duality in life, I think there's anxiety. So yeah, so for me, that taught me that the more you identify with an expectation, whether it's real or not, people might be sitting there just really wishing you well, but if in your head you think they're judging you, then you're going to be anxious. It's as simple as that. So that's number one, this relationship we have between ourselves and our audience, and whether they are listening in a judgmental way or not. And that can be real or unreal because it's in our head. We don't know the audience for the most part. And it's, you know, we can turn them into monsters or into angels who just wish us well. You know, that's up to us. So that sets something in motion. The next thing is about proficiency. So what happened to me in particular, and is that I started many new instruments along the way as were required. When there was a gap in the orchestra, I was asked to fill it. Or, you know, sometimes a new instrument became available and I wanted to try it. So I moved from violin to viola, not willingly. And I was very much out of my comfort zone because the method of reading music for the viola is completely different to the violin, even though the instruments look the same. So the similarity actually causes confusion, and I was being asked to play this instrument publicly when I was not ready. So there's that. There's being ready. It's starting something new, that feeling of newness and not feeling experienced enough, and also that feeling of not really knowing how to navigate your instrument, not knowing how to what your sound is like as well. You know, how am I sounding? I'm not sure. How does it sound? You know, what are people thinking? So it goes on to that little kind of thought process sometimes. So that's number two. It's the newness of something, starting something new, feeling unsure about your proficiency and your depth of experience not being there with a new instrument, because only time gives you that. Only time and practice gives you that experience. Low battery, it's always telling me that. So that's the second route, I think, of stage fright. So, okay, those are two things. So how do we deal with those two things? First of all, if we can see our audience as benevolent, if we can see them as well-wishers, whether they are or not doesn't matter, because it's our state of mind when we play. So if we see, or we choose to believe our audience is benevolent and kind and wishing us well and forgiving of any mistakes we make, we're going to play from a different place straight away. So there's that way to conquer that first kind of thing about, oh my goodness, there's an audience there. The second thing is to forget the audience entirely and introvert into yourself. Find your center, introvert into yourself and play from the heart regardless, and just forget the audience if that's possible. So that takes practice, meditation practice, I would say. You need, or a practice where you are learning to absorb yourself in your instrument and in the music that you are creating. And there may be many ways to do that. Two that I can think of are meditation, and the second I can think of is to literally put yourself out there as much as possible and learn how to absorb yourself in what you're playing, especially if it's something that you love. If you're playing something that you love, you're more likely to absorb yourself in it and forget that the audience even exists. So those are two ways, to my mind, to kind of overcome that first hurdle. So secondly, so you're playing an instrument, you don't feel you're proficient enough at it yet because you're just learning, but you want to express yourself, you want to share your music, and why not? Why not? That's brilliant. Some of the most beautiful performances. I'm not saying perfect in terms of technique, that's almost irrelevant when you come to true musicianship, and that's another thing to talk about. But trust that the joy and the desire to play will carry you forwards through any errors that you make. And what people will take away will not be, that one note there was really twangy or something. What they will take away is an experience, a musical experience that has emotionally affected them. And that's the true art in music. It's the true glory of it, in my opinion, that it can penetrate the emotional world and move people emotionally and bring them that richness of experience. So you can play technically perfectly, and well, any computer can probably do that. A computerized piece of music can play perfectly, and to a certain degree, if the composition of it is really wonderful or special, then it may move you. But the human element of performance adds an extra dimension that only you can bring to it. You bring yourself to a piece of music. No one else in the entire universe has ever played that piece of music the way that you are playing it. With its mistakes, without its mistakes, regardless of its mistakes. It's about you, your relationship with your instrument, your relationship with the music that you're playing, and that is what you then convey to an audience. It is a performance art in that respect. So that's another way to look at it, which for me I find helpful. The third thing really is to do with our own kind of expectations, I suppose. So I'm just going to our own expectations for ourselves. How kind are we to ourselves? Are we able to forgive ourselves if we make mistakes? So once when I was young, I had the experience of breaking down in a concert. I was not able to keep up with the other player. I was playing a duet. They were playing at a speed. They started at a speed that was too fast for me, and they continued on, and it was just too fast for me. And I got to the point where I literally had to stop playing because I couldn't play any faster than I was playing, and I had to stop. And it was in a concert situation. There were people there. I was young, and there's a vulnerability that comes with youth. I find as I get older I can brush things off a little bit more easily, but at the time it felt like the end of the world, quite frankly. And I just had to stop and stand there until the piece finished and then walk off. And that experience, as I say, I thought at the time was the end of the world, but actually what happened was my life went on in various different directions. My relationship with music changed for many years though, and I put my violin away for 10 years actually at that point because of that, and because of an exam experience where again, it's to do with expectation. When you have people who have very high expectations of you, around you, and you don't want to let your teachers down, and then something like, the pressure builds, and then, stage fright gets the better of you, and you don't perform on the day the way you might if you were playing on your own in your house, you know. So once you feel like you're letting people down around you, that can kind of add pressure to pressure. So if I could walk back in time and speak to myself, I'd be like, no, you know, no. It's not about anyone else. It's about you, your instrument, and how you feel about your music or the music that you're playing. And, you know, I learned that. It took me decades to really learn that lesson. And I learned it myself by liberating myself from technique. So my beginnings were very self-taught, completely self-taught. Taught myself the piano, taught myself the recorder, taught myself anything I could lay my hands on. And then it became formalized and I started lessons and etc., etc. And then it was all about technique, because no one can teach you musicianship. You become that music through your own desire to do so. And that's not something anyone can physically teach you how to do. It just is something, it's a state that happens to you, and everyone is capable of it. But technique it's literally just practice, learning, proficiency, muscle dexterity, alertness as well, being awake, being alert long enough through a piece to not make mistakes, memory. You know, there's a lot of left brain activity that comes to that, which sometimes can overwhelm the right brain that just wants the freedom of self-expression. So to create that balance in yourself is really hard. And what I learned was that I needed to liberate myself from my left brain completely. And the only way I was able to do that was to put sheet music down. I learned reluctantly how to play again, because I started not being able to read music and learning everything by ear. And I decided, you know, I found myself in a situation where I was learning folk music and the only way to learn it was by ear. No one was going to give me any sheet music. So I went back to that process, and that liberated me from my my kind of prison of technique and needing to focus on technique all the time and feeling like I couldn't play if my technique and my proficiency and every note was as it was written down on the paper. Because folk music is fluid, organic, it changes every performance. Your flourishes will be different, your pauses will be different. It's a real act of self-expression. So that's something that I found helpful, deciding not to rely on sheet music. So now I will read sheet music if I want to learn a new tune or somebody's asking me something. I will read it, but I will not play from it. I will learn the piece by ear, and I've got a video on that somewhere on my channel. I'll learn the piece by ear, and then I will play it so that I can find that place of self-absorption where I'm trying to just be with that music and enjoy it, regardless of the errors. If wrong notes creep in, so be it. It's all part of the live experience. And so those are just a few ideas that I have used for myself to overcome my stage fright. I still feel nervous every time I press record. I think it's going to go wrong. There's going to be mistakes. I don't practice a lot these days. I don't have time. And also, I don't like to over practice anything anymore, because I think something runs the risk of being lost along the way. My enthusiasm being one of them. So yeah, those are just, some thoughts that came to mind today that I thought to share, because I have come across people along my path that have suffered with stage fright and have had experiences that have been less than pleasant in terms of performance and occasionally, And you know, it's nice to know that there's support and you know, an understanding of in the world of music of you know, the whole different range of playing that's out there. There's no one way to do anything. There's no one way even to play an instrument. I did get a comment on this channel. Somebody pointed out that I was not holding my lyre as they would like me to hold it. And I probably, well, yeah, I wasn't. I had my reasons for holding my lyre the way I was holding it. And it is what it is. But there is no one way. I've been to concerts where people throw stones into pianos, onto the piano strings to make a piece of music. So there is no one way to play any instrument or any piece of music. There may be the way that you would like to play it, or the way you would like to hear it played, but that is utterly and entirely subjective to me at that time, or you at that time. And we have to, I think, for the sake of being open-minded, you know, appreciate, and also for the sake of creativity, appreciate that we have to let new stuff in, including the mistakes. You know, Beethoven. Some people might you know, say that no one's entirely sure whether every note on that page was as he heard it in his head. It probably is. Let's face it, he was Beethoven. But he was losing his hearing. And the torture of that, I can't imagine. But, you know, from that, look what came out, you know. So sometimes, you know, our happy mistakes, especially when we're composing music, can take us down beautiful, beautiful avenues of musical emotion that might not have happened had we not made that mistake, had we refused to move from the note on the page, you know. So yeah, I just thought I'd talk about this today because it was fresh in my mind as part of my kind of thought processes, and it's something I think about every time I pick up an instrument. So if anybody does have any thoughts and advice for people who are feeling nervous about playing, or if you want to share any thoughts you have about your own stage fright, and or questions, if I can't answer them, maybe somebody else, another musician who watches this channel might be able to, then yeah, you know, feel free to share. And other than that, happy playing. I wish you a lovely, lovely day, and I hope to see you soon with some music to offer. I will be offering music next time, I promise. I will not ramble on too much. So take care. Bye.